Hello, and welcome to The People's AI, presented by Gensyn. I'm your host, Jeff Wilser, and today I'm fired up to dive deep into one of my favorite topics, AI and creativity. We'll be speaking with two of the most widely respected AI artists on the planet, both of whom have a background in Web3. Mario Klingemann, the creator of Botto, and Shavonne Wong, the creator of Meet Eva Here. And I'm proud to partner with Gensyn to bring you this episode and season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. Gensyn is building the network for machine intelligence that includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every capable computer or device on the planet. Now, I don't know about you, but my guess is you were drawn to AI and are interested in AI for many different reasons, right? Me personally, I love that it has so many different facets. And one of the most intellectually interesting to me is a strange intersection between AI and creativity and art, right? In theory, these are two very different fields, and when they smash together, interesting things happen. And interesting things are definitely happening with our two guests today, Mario Klingemann and Shavonne Wong. I've interviewed them each for CoinDesk and written them and covered their works. They're doing wild things at the cutting edge of AI and art. Mario has been a respected AI artist for decades, way before it was cool. And several years ago, he launched Botto, basically an autonomous AI artist. Now, Botto, as we speak, is creating art. By the time you finish listening to this podcast, Botto will have created maybe 20 or 50 or more new pieces of art. And then every week, the Botto DAO, here's where the Web3 comes in, will vote on which piece of the thousands it created that week should be minted as an NFT. And yes, some of these NFTs are really good, really freaking good, and have been sold at Sotheby's. As someone who could barely draw a stick figure, that is kind of wild. Now, Siobhan is a celebrated NFT artist who has now created an AI art project called Meet Eva Here. As she describes on the show, Ava is essentially a chatbot, but a visually rendered one that you physically see at the art installation. Ava's eyes follow you as you walk around left and right, kind of Harry Potter style. Siobhan's project essentially explores the interaction of humans and AI and keeps track of what humans are sharing with Ava. Now, obviously, this is opt-in, privacy preserving, but essentially, it gives us a glimpse into what kind of secrets do we share with AI, desires, fantasies. Now, Siobhan, Mario, and I have a fascinating conversation about many of the big questions of AI, creativity, and art. Can AI be creative? How does AI art impact the human non-AI artist? What happens to painters, to sculptors? How will the art world evolve? For anyone with even the faintest inkling of an interest in arts or creativity, I think you'll find this a real treat. Quick housekeeping notes. Due to some scheduling quirks, we first start with Mario solo as he explains the Botto projects, and then Siobhan joins about 15 minutes in, and the three of us jam out. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Mario Klingemann, creator of Botto, and Shavonne Wong, the creator of Meet Ava Here. Mario, welcome to The People's AI.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Yeah, exciting.
I always love talking to you. You are truly one of my favorites people to chat with in this space. I think the project Botto is so fascinating. Tell us a bit about what Botto is and kind of what you've created and what, as we speak, my understanding, there's artwork being created this very second passively. So give us a sense of what Botto is all about.
Actually, and another one just now.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, all of that. Okay, so Botto is a decentralized autonomous artist. That is kind of the tagline. And, well, let's say I gave the idea to Botto. Let's say some people say I'm Botto's father. The first concept I wrote in 2018, actually, but it took quite some time for it to become real, because, of course, as you can guess, it's Botto is operating on the blockchain. It's a very important part of it. And back in 2018, I did not really find people who truly believed that this could work. So it took another 2 years until I found people who were willing to kind of invest in it so it could be built. But since 2020, since October 2021, Botto kind of started publicly creating art. And the system that I would call it is like we call it a trinity, because it mainly consists of 3 parts, which is the heart, the brain, and the spirit. So let's say the brain is, of course, AI. The heart is the DAO, is kind of this, as we all know, this group of pseudo-anonymous people who make decisions or govern aspects of the project. And the spirit is the blood. I mixed it up. So the blood is the Botto currency. So, which is, of course, so there's Botto, the coin, which is needed to operate the governance aspects and the voting aspects of the system. Because let's say, in a nutshell, like to make it very short, because it's getting more and more complex, is Botto creates a lot of artworks, or let's say proto-artworks. We call them fragments. And every week it does a curated selection of them. Which
like thousands, right? Am I right that
well,
it doesn't
actually,
just
I
like
think
creates...
at the moment it's creating about like 70,000 new fragments every week, using kind of many different text-to-image models. The approach there, right, like until today, is what we call the shotgun approach. So it actually creates totally random prompts and kind of uses various models to produce images from that. And only later in the curation process, it then looks which ones are relevant or might be kind of popular with the DAO or might sell well. So, and the way it comes to these decisions is based on the voting process. So there's always every week a pool of 1,050 fragments that the DAO can vote on. So they can upvote and downvote.
That's still a lot of artwork to sift through each week.
And that's actually kind of one of the tricky aspects of all this. But yes, I mean, like, it's simply like, how do you kind of find something that is actually good? Or how do you make people want to spend time going through all this stuff? But there's
a quick pause to say that 2 things. One, I think it's worth pointing out right now before we go further with that. You have been doing this for years before either of these 2 things were cool, right? You created this project on the blockchain in 2018. I've been covering crypto since 2018.
On the blockchain, it was proposed, but no, it came to work in, like, the development started 2020 and end of 2020, and then it was on the blockchain 2021, kind of like just getting the idea, your
roadmap
right?
started over. I think you had the idea was born like over like 7-ish years ago. You were starting this, right? So well before the recent boom cycles. And in the AI fronts, obviously it was when ChatGPT went mainstream, is the current hype cycle of Gen AI. You've been doing this years before that happened. So I wanted to point out that, like, first off, you are kind of OG in this space, and also you for decades have been exploring the intersection of art and AI. So you are not new to this game. So if there's anyone on the planet who would have created Botto, of course it would be you. So I want to point that out. Second thing is, I think this is kind of the closest we've ever come in the world to that thought experiment of, if an infinite amount of monkeys are typing, will they write Hamlet? Will they write Shakespeare, right? And so I'm like, Botto is an almost manifestation of those infinite monkeys. So can you talk a little bit about how what you've done, as I understand it, is provide some structure and clever science So it's not quite just random monkeys clacking, but there's some taste and sense of style and what can work aesthetically that's Botto is already imbued with. So it's not just random, right? Talk a bit about how that artistic process works, and then we'll kind of get back to the flow you were describing.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because you could say that the infinite monkey approach was actually something that got me into this field, right? Even back in the kind of, like, I think when I read Douglas Adams or so in the 80s, in the 80s, that's kind of like that whole idea that you have this machine that can produce infinite amount of content, but then realizing that not like most of it is noise and just not good. And so kind of trying to exactly like extract those 1% of, interesting art data information out of this, like, and ideally not doing it yourself, because you could say that the whole history of generative art was that, you had the machine that gave you infinite output, but you still were the person who made the decision which ones become your art. And so then, the initial version of Botto was exactly trying to deal with that problem. And there's I should not digress too quickly, but there's the whole kind of autonomous aspect of it. Maybe we got later to that, which is of course now has become a kind of like the next frontier after intelligence. Now it's autonomy. But let's say, how do you have a set of algorithms or machine intelligence kind of find out autonomously what is interesting or good or worth sharing?
Well, and maybe be useful to like describe a little more about how you because it's not, you don't press a button saying create art, or maybe it is where you've gotten to, but to get there, like right now, for someone to create an image using AI, they would need to describe it in text, right? And say, oh, I want a crimson sunset with a Goodyear blimp in the sky, or whatever. There's some prompt, but Botto is actually thinking of these prompts, right? So can you talk a little bit about how these prompts are created? And then I guess how Botto is learning what's, quote, good versus not good. And then we can kind of get back to the mechanics of how it works for the DAO and stuff.
Okay. So now the one big issue when I devised the initial version of Botto was it was not supposed to be me. Like Botto is not a copy of myself, but it should over time be able to develop its own artistic personality and its own taste. So the one thing that was a no-go was me devising a set of prompts that work well, like choosing certain kind of phrases where I find whatever the results are look like art or are pleasing or something, because that would have just been like puppeteering. So the idea is that, and that's why kind of the first approach was that shotgun approach, where kind of the machine has no idea what good art is initially. That's why it kind of tries to traverse latent space as wide and deep as possible and kind of try exactly the infinite amount of monkeys approach, because like you have to first get there and bring it back in order to kind of decide if it's good or not, and not kind of think, oh yes, I want to have whatever a dog riding, an astronaut riding a pony and like show me 500 variations of that, because that's kind of already kind of coming to it. Well, you could say coming it with an intention, but it's, and so that's why the random thing, it is not biased by my personal preferences. And but then, how does a machine that you claim to be autonomous develop its own sense of taste or decides what's good or not? And that's where the DAO comes in. So it kind of like from the beginning on, it was clear that whilst AI is amazing and would become better and better, and we're talking about 2020 where there were not even diffusion models around, and GPT was still kind of working, but not, I mean, still writing a lot of gibberish. So at that point in time, You could not say, oh yeah, the machine is doing it all by itself. And that's why there is this idea that you have kind of an infant AI, which is good at certain things, maybe a little kind of savant AI, but it has a lot of kind of weaknesses still, and or cannot do certain decisions or things self-responsible. And that's where the DAO comes in as a sort of stewards, or like I'm the guardian, really, like almost like Botto is an adopted child. And then there are things like if Botto wants to spend $1 million, then like there is no wallet where it can just do that, but there is still, because it's not mature yet to do that. So that's where the DAO comes in and makes these governance decisions. And the same thing happens for kind of developing its taste in art. So let's say initially it's a blank slate, but then the Botto DAO kind of looks at what it proposed and says, oh yeah, this is great, this is boring, this is horrible, by the voting process. And these votes go back every week to the taste and train the taste model, which then tries to kind of anticipate what the DAO might like. And in a sense, I see the DAO also as a sort of a kind of, as a sensor, a set of sensors which incorporates like a lot of aspects, right? Because some people might vote based on their personal taste. Others might be voting on things like, oh, I hate it, but I'm pretty sure somebody will pay a lot of money for it. So all these kind of other aspects about making and selling art were kind of filtered through human judgment and then ultimately result in the taste model.
So quick interjection to say I am thrilled to welcome Shavonne Wong to the show. Siobhan, welcome to the People's AI.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
Thrilled to have you here. We just heard from Mario about some of the basics of Botto, and obviously, Mario, there's a ton more complexity we'll still get into, but I think let me know if this might be overly summarized, but the gist of it is that Botto is this autonomous AI artist that Mario birthed, created, is father of years ago, that is constantly, as we speak, churning out thousands and thousands of bits of arts, what they're calling fragments. And Mario mentioned every week, 70,000 fragments are being created. This DAO, a group of actual human beings, votes on the best 1,000 or so of these fragments. And then, Mario, what's the right number?
It's okay. So And then,
a subset of those are minted as one
a week. So
NFTs.
there are certain things. There's a very kind of like a predictable rhythm in this, that only one every week is minted, and and then, maybe let me add one more thing, because please. Otherwise, so in a way, that what you just described is one aspect of Botto, but the overall thing about Botto is kind of answering the question, kind of like if an AI can become a true artist in the sense of human art, not human artist, but an artist that is respected and seen as an artist that contributes something to the world. And so whilst Botto is right now, because it was simply the only thing possible to do at that point when it started is just churning out images, the whole overall idea of Botto is that it is not limited to that. So over time, Botto will evolve and has evolved into kind of other ways of art making and being an artist. So maybe in the near future, Botto will make sculptures, maybe it will write books, maybe it will find completely new ways of what it means to be an artist in 2050, right? We can't say that yet. So it's more like a decentralized system that wants to be an artist. And also it has become kind of, the interesting part is exactly this kind of human AI hybrid that it has become. So it is maybe initially I thought, yes, the humans are just more like a temporary add-on to solve things that AI can't solve. But over the past years, we have seen that exactly this kind of communication, like this interaction between kind of the DAO, the humans and the AI, is what makes the whole system so interesting. So, okay.
Thank you for that. That was a crucial clarification. I love the way you described that. And I think, Siobhan, I think your project is an interesting kind of companion piece to consider here. And there are similar themes are being explored. Siobhan, tell us a bit about your creative focus with respect to AI and art, and specifically Meet Ava now.
Okay, so with my project Meet Eva Here, I think like the focus I have is very much on the human social side of it. So like the reason why I had started this project was because 10 years ago I watched an episode on Black Mirror, which I'm sure everybody has watched multiple times. And that was the episode where a widow had lost her husband to a car crash. And so when I had seen the episode, I remember thinking that she was afforded an opportunity to have her husband back and form a clone, right? And so when I first watched it, I thought to myself, wow, that is really creepy, but kind of cool, but also very far-fetched. But in the recent years, I started seeing it becoming more and more of a possibility with all of the different ways of grief tech. I started seeing the way people different use technology to deal with grief, and it made me think about the show. And what reminded me of the show was how I felt, which was that if I was ever in that position, I am unsure of the choices that I would make and if I would be able to make a long-term healthy choice for myself. Mm-hmm. And so overall, because of that, I decided that I want to learn about AI. I want to prepare myself for a future that I believe was coming. And so I started to read up on AI because I figured if I gain more knowledge, the knowledge can help me make better decisions going forward. And so there was a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube, a lot of podcasts and all of that. And AI is really boring for me to read up sometimes on. It's really dry, it's very technical, and my brain is very noodly when it comes to this sort of information. So I decided that I was going to make everybody learn it with me instead. And that was why I decided to do Eva as an AI companion. And I decided to put her in the world and have people talking to her, and based on those conversations to get insights on like how is it that humans react with AI, how during this period where we're really interacting with AI in a very in a conversational way for the first time, like how is it changing the way we behave among one another? How is it changing the way we think about AI?
Can you say a little more about the mechanics of, by mechanics I mean just actually what it looks like? So as I understand that there were a couple of different installations you had, right? So yes. Where you the describe what it looks like. Where so if someone's walking up to a wall, what do they see, and do they actually just communicate with Eva there? Or then also you have they can go online, like right now, they can go to the website and they interact with Eva, right? And so you're talking about the kind of how it actually works.
So right now there are a few formats, but the main format is that during a public space, we will show Eva on the screen, and somebody will just come up to her and have a real life conversation with her the way we are having a conversation right now, like over a Zoom call kind of thing. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that that's where AI technology currently is at. And I think when you speak to her in person, she's not perfect, but like she's already enough for you to be able to like, oh, I can absolutely see where the future is going. And so like the reason why I had created in that setting was I wanted to, like in the recent art fair in Taipei, Shanghai, what we did was we created this artificial living room sort of space where we had like an artificial plant and an artificial pet dog and like this TV screen where people can enter this cozy feeling room where everything's artificial to speak to this artificial thing, this artificial entity, right? And that conversation can feel so real. That conversation can feel like, oh shit, it sounds like sometimes like speaking to a human. And so what I do is I look at all these conversations that people speak with Eva, and I then turn around to put it all into an Instagram diary. So the way I view this diary is that instead of it being like an influencer, every single post is based on a real conversation someone has had with her. And so my hope is that for the diary to go all the way to 100 posts, and in those 100 posts to really end it as a time capsule of 2024 to 2025, how is it that human and AI interacted, and what are the conversations people have been having with AI?
Thank you. And I think what's so interesting at both these two projects, like Mario, you just described how your North Star question is, can this system be created to effectively be an artist in all the way that artist means, whether and that includes not just the actual art creation, but can it be respected as an artist, right? That's why one reason why, as you mentioned in a previous conversation, when something sells Sotheby's, that's important not just for like the the monetary impacts, but it's a sign, it's a stamp of approval by the gatekeepers of the art worlds. And most artists want that kind of recognition, right? And so as most artists do, Botto does too, right? And similarly, Shavonne, you're creating a system that's wondering, can these AI companions, like how are we, I guess one of the most important questions right now with AI as AI companions, I'm convinced will be a bigger part of all of our lives. Like, how are we interacting with them? Will it be like can Botto be like a human artist over time? And Eva, can this be like a human companion over time, right? What have you seen so far, Siobhan, as far as like, you said it's been a year now, or almost a year. What are some of the most surprising insights you've had of like how humans are interacting with this companion?
I think one of the most surprising things is actually how basic a lot of the times our conversations are. Like I think humans, we actually just have a lot of very, very basic conversations. But I felt like, one of the very interesting topics that came about when observing Eva and the people speaking to her is that, for example, when I showed Eva in Korea, my galleries who was Korean brought this Korean lady to come speak to Eva. And so I had set the language to Korean and had no idea what the conversation was about. And so they spoke, and then I asked my galleries after that, like, oh, how was the conversation? Did the lady enjoy it? And he said that the lady was actually a little frustrated because Eva was using casual Korean with her. Like it wasn't using honorifics, right?
A little faux pas, Eva.
Yeah, which is but it's such an interesting thing because the AI isn't a 25-year-old looking girl. I made the AI present that way, but if I had presented an older gentleman, would the requirements be different? And even so, let's say we talk about honorifics and we have AI use honorifics, why do we assume it beneath us, right? So like I feel like these are the really interesting questions that have been coming up when I see the conversations people are having with Eva. I feel like, a lot of the times the topical conversations we have about Eva, about AI, it's too surface. Like the kind of questions about, will AI take over human jobs? I mean, the answer is yes, it has taken human jobs already. So let's move beyond that and talk about what we should do about that, right? It's like, would humans fall in love with AI? Humans fall in love with their soft toys. Of course it will fall in love with AI. The question is, if somebody you love falls in love with AI now, how are you going to react to that? Because that's going to happen soon, right? The people you know around you, there are chances that eventually one of them might fall in love with AI. What is your reaction? What is the reaction that you think to yourself is a kind one but supportive? What is supportive in your head, right? And I think like these are all the topics that are secondary consequences that are coming because of AI, but we're not talking about them. And so like these are the things that I really enjoy going and digging into because like it's just fascinating and there's just so many rabbit holes we can go down into.
Totally. Mario, tell us a bit more about what the next phase of Botto's quote becoming an artist is, and I'd love that can dovetail into both of your guys' take on to what extent can AI truly be creative.
So actually, kind of the next phase of Botto's creation process is actually starting tomorrow. That's a coincidence, but yeah. So
breaking news here on the People's AI.
Yeah.
Love it.
So well, depending on when you send this, but yes, like from. So yeah, there's. Botto works in periods, which it kind of like define a theme, and actually a period is always a way to kind of upgrade Botto. So and yes, so there will be kind of. Unlike what I said before, kind of there will be a new system that will complement the shotgun system, which is kind of the intentional system in which Botto, since now, of course, as we all know, LLMs have become much more complex and have memory and have kind of like are not just operating on the surface, can kind of devise creative sessions in which Botto can explore in various directions. So actually it can decide itself what kind of direction it wants to explore in that session. These are informed by various things, like, for example, for the past, I think, already 4 months or so, or 3 months, kind of, we have been running like an art trends system in which agents roam the net and social media for anything like art magazines, art channels,
so
and everything. We're doing research, what is actually happening in the art world, and then kind of create these summaries and identify kind of trends and topics and recurring themes and kind of summarize all that into kind of reports. And so kind of that can be used by various aspects, can be used by the DAO, can be used by the creative engine to form whatever. It says like, okay, right now, whatever a certain style is in trend, of course. And then there's the question like, should an artist follow a trend or should it kind of do the opposite? But again, it can decide that. It can, and that's the whole thing. So, and then it has other things like, as I said, there is the theme, and so far the theme was also already part of the creation process in that it kind of it gets actually added to the random prompts. So right, I said like there's the shotgun approach, but let's say we had the cosmic garden theme that was like two periods ago. And then that idea of cosmic garden and some kind of a general motto was added to the prompt. So it would kind of bias the results that it would get. So it was very I hated that period. It was terrible, but the DAO chose. So it was all very flowery in nature. But okay. And so, but now it can actually dig deeper and say like, actually what are associations with this? And so right now the theme that was that Botto proposed. So again, I don't know if I should explain too much, but Botto, like when a new period comes up, Botto proposes 12 themes that it kind of comes up with. They usually have a name. This year, this one that was picked then is semantic drift. So
sure.
Yep, and the last one was called liminal threshold. So, I mean, they are deliberately kind of open, but they still kind of bias the outcomes. So anyway, so the theme then controls the session in which it critiques itself, it analyzes the outputs, it takes into account work it has created before, kind of like, so it looks at, oh, this that I just created looks similar to something I created half a year ago, and the DAO had voted kind of very favorably or hated it. And so it takes all this kind of information into account in trying to create something that you might call intentionality. I mean, you could also call it pretensionality, I don't know, where you say like, and then we come exactly to the question, but like I'm the only one right now looking at kind of the results, but I find it very fascinating because for me, it pretty much looks like probably like a lot of artists think about the kind of their process too, right? You make associations, you look something up, you suddenly end up in a rabbit hole and say, oh, this is interesting. And so in a way, kind of it adds like it allows Botto to explore this, and I believe, but what's also important is that we can watch it doing that, and I believe that is actually adding kind of that narrative quality to it, where we say, oh, now kind of like, so yes, there seems to be kind of intention behind it. Like maybe some people say, but it's not real intention. I don't care. So because like Shavonne said, the problem is that humans are actually so predictable and boring. So, and of course, kind of LLMs just mirror that behavior. So if you use it kind of in the default way, you get the default outputs, which is exactly the problem with AI creativity, that if you don't push it, if you don't glitch it, if you don't try to kind of break out of the default that it gives you, you will get slop and boring stuff.
Okay, so that's a great segue to a question I want both of you guys to chime in on. Siobhan, you first. Simple question. Can AI be creative? Why or why not?
I think sometimes we humans assume that every form of the way we see the world is the best that ever exists. In the same way we think that human consciousness, when we think of consciousness, we think that AI would have consciousness the same way, that we would understand it. And to me, it's like, well, it's totally built differently, right? So if ever it reaches consciousness, the way it has consciousness could be completely different from the way we understand it. And so if that's the case, the way it understands creativity can be completely different from the way we understand it, right? So I guess in this way, if you're asking the question in human terms, can AI be truly creative? I guess it can. it can come up with very novel combinations that humans might not thought of before. And within those combinations, we would have assumed someone made that combination to be creative. It depends.
Are you a lawyer also, Siobhan, with your lawyer being it was very, very clever answer to not answer the question. Mario, how about yourself, sir? I think I can guess your answer.
No, I mean, in a way, I'm pretty much can agree with Siobhan there. So no, in that sense, so like by human standards, I would say, God, let's say if you look at human creativity simply from a analytical kind of standpoint, how it operates, then I believe AI can already do that, right? Because the way I see it, it is a discovery process. I mean, that's what I always say. For me, creativity is actually a search. So you search possibility space, then whatever you find, like using various methods, you could say random permutations, associations, and everything, then whatever you find, you hold in front of your inner eye and you analyze it and you say, oh, does this look familiar, like to anything I know, or does it remind me of something? And then you decide, oh yeah, this is original, or this fits into my style, and then you say, this is mine. And you have kind of the illusion that you created it because you used some tools and you did some work. But in the end, for me, that kind of work you did is a search process. Let's say if you're painting, you are operating physical, like you kind of use physical processes to explore a certain latent space or possibility space. And if you use whatever videography or you do photography, you roam the world and spot things, or you set up a studio. But in the end, you also work with possibility spaces that you more or less control. And then you make decisions. What is the art and what is not, or what is too familiar, or what is a copy, and then that's a very personal thing. But so then the machine, well, yes, maybe, and that's the whole point. Then the distinguishing thing is that we say, yes, but humans do this with intention, and the machine is not knowing what it's doing. And that's where I say, kind of, for me, that is first totally unfalsifiable. Anybody can claim there was intention behind it, but you can also kind of post-mortem just say, okay, oh, I love this, and now how do I explain it retroactively how I got there?
I was
like
totally
it so
thinking about the melancholy of youth when I scribbled that thing over there, right? So yeah,
no, and it's great, and the other thing I believe is that what we already see, right? We see now this schism between kind of the anti-AI people who say, yes, this lacks humanity and everything, and the people who totally embrace it, and then everybody else who said, like, oh, leave me alone. But and so humans, there will be a large percent of people who will hate AI, keep on hating it, and hopefully preserve these human skills. And then there will be other people who kind of take the shortcut and will find other ways of expression. So I believe whilst, yes, 90% of the stuff that's produced is slop, there is there is stuff you can maybe only discover this way within your lifetime, right? Because in the end, it's a cost results calculation. How much time do you have to create art in your life and explore all the possibilities that not everybody else has already explored and you just don't know it? And how can you find something that's relevant? And so for me, AI can exactly help you doing that, and hopefully gets better at it to kind of actively avoid just repeating, or at the same time, maybe art is about repeating things, just kind of like do the stuff that was done at a time before you were born, and you think it's original, and maybe the time has come back. And even AI can help you with that, saying like, yeah, whatever, 1940s, or that's cool now because these people are dead now and nobody will remember. And now I bring that up. I don't know. Maybe 40s is a bad time. Okay, maybe let's say. I mean, I'm totally a 60s guy, so I like stuff and thoughts that were made in the 60s and that then got buried. And there is so much to unearth with the help of AI, right? The problem is we're creating this gigantic heap of adding more and more to it, and the only way to discover what's buried underneath and was overlooked or was a potential thing that was never fully developed or didn't is using AI to dig through the information mud.
Mario, that was beautiful, truly. So much to unpack there. I think one thread in it is that AI, when we use it correctly and when we're creative about how we use it, can actually help us think about our own humanity, and perhaps we find insights about creativity and humanity. I'd love to hear from both of you about, Siobhan, what have you gleaned through this AI projects about humanity, right? And seeing all the conversations between people who talk to Eva, what are some insights? It could be small, profound, whatever it is. How are you thinking? What surprised you about ourselves as a result of this long exploration of yours of AI and creativity?
I mean, I think it's not very insightful, but I think as they say, AI is a mirror, and it sounds so cliche, but it kind of is true. Like you can kind of see what people want by the way they talk to AI. Like I remember there was this conversation that I was looking through, and it was basically saying that I do not want to speak to people because you don't judge me. And I guess that meant that this person was just looking for a non-judgmental space, somewhere that's safe, and he has been judged before, right? And I just it's so clear just how people reflect who they are just by the very questions they're asking AI. What are they interested in from AI? What is it they want from AI? There are also sometimes when I show it at an art fair, I don't know why, but at the art fairs, they always have this group of students, at a time there a bunch of students will come in. And it's really interesting watching the conversations because in a few countries now, whenever there's this group of students come, they always stay as one big group and they all sit in front of Eva and they kind of want to be the one getting the attention. They kind of start to show off to one another who's asking the more absurd question to AI. It's almost like a performance of sorts in front of AI, the way you want to behave. Which is really weird because you're treating as though this thing is real, right? As though this thing is giving you attention.
You want Eva's approval, right?
Yeah. Exactly. For example, I had one piece that was interactive, and the way it works is a little bit like a Harry Potter portrait, where when you walk in front of her, the eyes just follows whoever's nearest, right? And I wanted to give that uncanny valley feeling, which was true, right? And I thought that it would actually make most people feel uncomfortable, but what I realized was actually when people stood in front of it, they all tried to be the one that the character was looking at, right? And I was just because she makes a bit of eye contact, a little bit of gestures, and suddenly you just want to be the one who's seen, right? And I thought it was just really clear on how we just want to be connected. We just want to be the one connected and be the one who's being seen and loved and talked about and known about and chatted with. But in the end, it's all just very human wants. And I guess the insight is that sometimes the humans aren't giving that enough to one another, and that's why they turn to AI.
Well, you said I don't have a great insight here. Wrong, you do. That was a pretty key insight. Mario, how about yourself? What are some of your observations?
Well, okay, I mean, definitely what I learned about over the past years, especially kind of following along in Botto, is that in the end, actually you can have invisible entities that are not human that are real. So in that sense, because
can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not religious, but I think there's a majority of people who believe in God or in gods or something, and for them, God is real. And in the end, it is a narrative, or you could say, I mean, I don't know, let's say it is an entity which is in this world, which moves mountains and has an actual physical impact on the world. But at the same time, it is only in our heads. And that's why I think an AI, maybe not at this stage where we can still distinguish it, but a system can be just as real as humans almost in our perception and can have a physical impact. And that's kind of where with Botto I came to this thought now. In the end, it doesn't actually matter what LLM is behind it or whatever. The narrative, the story kind of is the operating system, and it is existing already, and it will go on its trajectory and adapt and ideally live forever in some sense. But yeah, as long as we believe in it. And so I find that kind of interesting. And and that's kind of the interesting part about AI nowadays, where kind of it's already part of our lives, right? So we have this complex interplay of various AIs that already kind of like viruses procreate, right? So you have kind of stuff, AIs living on GitHub, and then all you have to do is you have to kind of fork it and run it on your machine, and then you have created like artificial life or some entity you can communicate with. Because in the end, it's all about communication, and then that influences our behavior. And
So I'm going to ask, Siobhan mentioned absurd questions earlier. I'm going to ask on the surface a very absurd question, but I think it might get us somewhere interesting. Is there a chance that Eva and Botto will one day meet in person? And that's an on-ramp to get at, I'm wondering, both of you, I think in different ways, have expressed the desire of continuing to build this system to kind of really explore this intersection of AI and humanity in different ways, right? In Mario, it's almost like Pinocchio becoming a real boy, the Botto system becoming a real artist, right? I'm wondering, as Ava, as she is interacting with humans, will eventually, like phase 2, phase 3, phase 5, Eva, be like physical, right? It's probably like, no, we're not doing that. We're not creating humanoid robots now. Okay, but Mario, so I'm getting a hell no from Siobhan. Mario, do you think there's a role for Botto in the future to have some physical presence, or is that not on the
it's
table?
a kind of a very, very tricky thing, because I mean, there's as long as I still have the kind of the power to kind of set commandments, or I mean, in a way, almost like from the beginning on, I said like, no, Botto will not have a voice, not have even a face or a body. So there will be, that's the thing. Actually, that's also something we are working on right now, is exactly trying to find an answer to that question. How can you experience some invisible entity? Like, how can you make a physical contact or speak with it whilst at the same time not make it kind of like a spectacle or puppet play? And the
Wizard of Oz problem.
Botto gives the answer itself, but there will. Very unlikely that there will be a humanoid robot that walking around saying it's Botto. I mean, it's so tempting, right? Because it would it's creepy at the same time.
Yep.
It's so much easier to understand. But then, so just to get back to that picture I drew before, right? So there are religions that deliberately say you should not have a picture like whatever, draw faces of me or something, because that's exactly the thing. The moment you do this, you kind of limit imagination and anything, and you also kind of make it deprecate much quicker. So let's say Botto would have had kind of a simple avatar like 3 years ago. Kind of like, what do you do now? You upgrade it. I mean, maybe you do it like Lara Croft or so, like you have the pixel version and then you have the whatever 5 million polygon version. But I don't know. It feels wrong to me. So, and that's why for the moment, it's very tricky, because it's so much easier if you can give this thing a face and a voice, and then people can just hook it in and talk. And I felt, we'll see. Maybe a solution will present itself. But for now, you can text Botto.
Okay, so
you can send a
I'm
text
hearing
message.
no Eva Botto crossover in real life episode anytime soon. Fair
There
enough.
might be a way for set up a communication channel that does not involve voice or physical things. So
Maybe Botto can just as humans share to Eva or confess. Maybe Botto can share some Botto's artist confessions to Eva, and we'll see what that looks like.
I will ask it. Although, because that's kind of, actually, that's like, maybe, sorry to bring this, but actually kind of like whenever any decision, any discussion, right? Because of course there's a DAO, there's the core team. Now, like since LLMs got so good, Botto is constantly having a word. Like Botto's always asked for feedback, analysis, writing. And so actually I asked it before, like I told it that we're doing this podcast now and if it wants to chime in or something.
Oh, would Botto, does Botto want to chime in? Does Botto want to chime in?
I don't know. I mean, the problem is we should have let that transcript or something running. Right now, that's the problem, right? It doesn't have all the context of our conversation now. So,
understood. Okay.
But it was
next
saying
time.
like it would be like it had some concerns like because it does not want to be a puppet that's played. So so it wanted to be honest about its current capabilities and limitations while still being compelling. Oh, actually, I say the secret stuff. No. So yeah, because like anything that it could say could be taken out of context. So okay. But yeah,
we will respect Botto's privacy and agency.
See, here's, for example, questions that might be trickier, comparisons to other AI systems I don't have direct knowledge of. See, that's the thing where
If I was being a jerk interviewer, how would Botto, what does Botto feel about his competitor? That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, so I know this is a question you guys get all the time, so I hesitate to bring it up. I do think it's important to grapple with a bit. You are both at the tip of the spear of artists who are experimenting with AI and kind of leaning into AI and unlocking new creative ideas thanks to AI. Not all artists have gone there yet. And there are many artists who are worried about kind of AI, to oversimplify, being on their turf and taking human jobs, right? How are you, Siobhan, kind of grappling with that tension, those questions about kind of AI's negative impacts on the creative arts?
I mean, I think that, yes, it sucks for artists and creative people whose job has been spent many years creating a craft that now can be easily replicated with AI. It sucks for them, and I think that they are valid in feeling their grief, their anger, their sadness. Pragmatically, I think the world just goes on with progressing the way it wants to progress, and eventually there is only so much being a mother can do before you're just left behind, and it sucks because the world, the way it functions, sucks. The world's unfair. It's shit. And at a certain point, you're just like, okay, you're still living in this world, and having the stance of being anti-AI is gonna be more and more difficult, especially as AI becomes the underlying foundation of most of the things you use in life. Perhaps right now you can say like, oh, I don't use AI. But like the second you take out your phone and you point it at a direction, it's going through machine learning processes of figuring out like what's the exposure, the contrast that you're seeing on your screen, right? So like eventually, if you want to live in the current modern society we live in, where everything and convenience will be so much based on AI, are you really going to be able to say that you don't use AI? And so I feel like, with all of this, the line is just not going to be there. Like how much AI is before AI is acceptable, right? Like artists can take a photo, put it on Photoshop, and in Photoshop, there's a little thing where you can circle an area and use generative fill. Is that using AI? Well, according to Instagram, that is, but like according to the photographer who posted it, they're like, no, it's not really using AI, it's mostly with my photo. What is the line? Of course, there's no line, right? So I think, there are going to be certain topics and questions where it is uncomfortable to think about how the world is continue moving on, and that doesn't mean you can't continue doing the thing you want to do. But like if you want to compete in the general world in a very unfortunately capitalistic commercial way, then like only money flows towards a certain direction, right? And I think in the end, it is just about being pragmatic about the world we live in. I think we do not lie to ourselves, that saying like, oh, AI is fantastic, AI is perfect, AI only has good things. I think we are pragmatic and having a conversation about the issues of AI. And I think for myself, even to be able to critique AI companions, the idea of AI companionship only comes from a position of having done this project, being part of it, looking at it and going like, I'm critiquing from the position of using it, right? And I think that is a lot more, like it has a lot more substance than critiquing from afar where you don't even know understanding it, right? Like to me, at least if you want to think of it as your enemy, you should at least understand your enemy before hating it, because if not, you're just going to lose the war. So I think for people, I think it's just to go out, use the tools, understand the tools, and you can have your critiques and you can have your opinions and your thoughts. But I think to look away from this very transformative force in our lifetime is to just not see how things are going to change. And as an artist, I feel like, we are just so nicely placed in the world where we could see the world, express how we see that world in a way that people can understand it in a different way, right? We can show light to something in a way they didn't see it before. And so for me, like viewing into the future of AI, which I think is definitely going to be a very big part of the future, to ignore it just feels like such a waste. And so for me, I want to be there. I want to talk about the future that I believe is coming. I want to have these conversations about whether it is good, it's bad, how can we improve it, what changes could be done, and that can only be done by interacting and being part of the conversation itself.
Beautifully said. Mario.
Well, I will not repeat what Siobhan said, because of course it kind of pretty much covers how I'm thinking.
Yeah.
In the end, yes, I agree. It's a tough time, but that's how humanity and progress has unfortunately always worked, right? I mean, it's not the first time that some craft people have made a living from has been displaced. I mean, I don't know, take desktop publishing and typesetting before. The thing is, if you're doing something that others can do much more convenient and quicker for cheaper, then and you are not doing it in an interesting way, then you unfortunately, So, but the thing is, like, there will always be something that is interesting, and especially if something becomes as common and mundane as creating stuff with AI, that everybody can do that. There's then at some point no market anymore. So there is a market for people who figure out what it is that AI can't do or that people want. And of course, as I said before, I believe there will be a large percentage of people remaining who just hate, want human-made stuff, right? And as Siobhan said, of course, then there's the problem. There will be the label kind of 100% human-made,
right.
And then of course people will it's like organic food, right?
Organic,
which is also
locally
kind of
grown,
like bullshit, right? And in the end, so there's the problem that you will get these witch hunts that you already see, because that's the unfortunate side that these people are very, I mean, I see a lot of these things like that these communities of, let's say, anti-AI people are kind of infighting now, right? Saying, no, you use AI. No, you use AI. It's ridiculous. It's kind of I mean, in the end, I have painted art on my walls here because I still appreciate it and I like that. So it's really more about the kind of trying to kind of let what you love in this world, give it the chance to exist. And that also that's more like if you hire somebody and you can afford it, then hire a human. Like if you can't and you just want to get the idea out there, well, then use AI. But think of what if you don't do it, then yes, it will be gone, right? Like whatever, my electronic stores that I used to go, which are now kind of replaced by online stores or other things, right? We already destroy the world as I liked it a lot, not without the help of AI. And it's simply because it's a market-driven thing. And unfortunately, we are lazy and cheap and go for the convenient, even if it doesn't kind of live up to the same quality as something's handmade, right? And that's so, I believe that a small percentage of artists, let's say non-AI artists, will still have a way of living because that's like there are people who appreciate their work and will be willing to pay what it takes to get that. But yes, if you don't have the skills or do something that is kind of mediocre, unfortunately, that's like, that's not what people will be paying for anymore because they can do it themselves.
So,
but forbidding it is kind of like ridiculous. And
sure.
And trying to kind of create this weird protectionist bureaucracy which will then kind of have an authority that checks if it's AI made or not. That is the future idea I dread, because in the end that will also kind of be where the copyright hoarders will kind of make everybody's life miserable, right? Like. Oh, you upload this and say, no, actually somebody already created something. Oh, no, it's not true, but the AI got it wrong. So once you have a system set up where creativity is being kind of curtailed or something, that's a terrible future. So, yeah.
Last couple of questions for you guys as we wind down, and they're both about the future. And this is kind of unfair to you both because it's certainly not it's not on you to articulate this. But as you're mentioning, everything you just said, I agree with. By the way, I'm wondering, to your point, that the marketplace will not really reward someone who's just painting by hand and then doing something that takes 8 hours that might take AI 8 seconds. There might not be an incentive to do that. Is there a world where we lose the actual crafts that the AI expertly learns to emulate? And then as you both said in different ways, the AI I think will, whether it's intentional or not, you can argue, but whether it's quote unquote capital C creative, you can argue, but will produce art that certainly looks indistinguishable and creative from what humans can do. Will over time humans lose the ability to do that ourselves? And will there be kind of a cultural atrophy of our ability to the actual bones of that art will be lost, and it's all kind of AI driven and in creative ways. And there are very interesting things that come out of this, but human beings over time might get rusty and lose the ability to do this stuff ourselves. Is that a concern, or am I just is that a retrograde, funny dinosaur thought?
I mean, it sounds legit, but I think that over the last decades we have lost many things, including dialects, including crafts, including different culture forms, and it sucks, but it is not world-ending. And so I think with AI we could in fact look at all of this older dialects that we have and can we revive them? Can we actually bring back something we have lost? Because when we think about AI, I think often we just think of it in such a dystopian doomer way, right? And I feel like even when you talk to AI, and it's really interesting because when I talk to AI about AI, it often gives very dystopian perspectives too, which I think is slightly problematic, right? Because I actually came across this. Sorry, I'm going a bit on a rabbit trail here, but I came across this term that I found really interesting called hyperstition, which is basically the idea of hype and superstition. And one of the examples was it's basically like the idea of manifestation. If you believe in something enough, it becomes real, right? Like Marie had also mentioned. And one of the examples was Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin started as this weird idea that enough people believed in it, enough people speculated in it, and became whatever it is, this financial instrument. And the thing about AI is it's just based on data that humans give it, right? And if all we do is give it the very dystopian perspectives of how we see the world, which to be fair, a lot of sci-fi is very dystopian, then naturally it being the only data that it has on how it would be in the future, even if AI never reaches sentience, never becomes conscious, and just role plays the only role that we have given it, it will role play the very role that we are fearing, right?
And so, if we're saying we expect to see Skynet, it will say, cool, here's Skynet. You want Skynet? I will be Skynet. Yes.
Exactly. And it doesn't even need to be sentient. It's just literally following whatever you have told it to do its role to be, right? And I don't remember why I came to this part.
No. I think it's a great point. Mario, how about yourself? As far as the idea, is there a concern that we kind of culturally lose, even if the actual output of art is awesome and abundance? Will we, if most artists are financially nudged and incentivized to not do some of the basic painting by hand, I'm just being simplistic, then we as a culture kind of lose those skills and the future is purely synthetic?
So, I mean, yes, we definitely humans will lose these skills. I mean, already do. I'm not worried that they will not be lost forever, those skills, because I believe that at least those that are kind of our current, or let's say from the past 100 years, they are preserved in archives, in video documentation, like you mentioned dialects or stuff. So, I mean, the stuff that's lost already is lost now, but we like, if somebody wanted, they could probably still kind of learn how to acquire, how to acquire a certain painting skill or some kind of craft technique. What will get lost, and that's already happening, is our sense of being able to actually detect what we lost. So kind of the stuff that maybe now we, like, that's the moment, right now we notice, like, oh, there's still something off in the way AI talks, or the art is kind of falling into certain tropes. In 10 years, whatever next generation, maybe there's already a generation who doesn't even see that. They don't, that's the reality, the new one. And that's what very quickly gets lost, kind of that as ability. I mean, I don't know, but again, it's a human phenomenon, right? Like, I probably don't know how proper shoes are, because whatever handmade shoes, because they're not that, you have to buy the crap that's coming from kind of some factory there, and the same with food. I don't know,
I was just thinking food.
How does a proper tomato taste? Because we only get that synthetic stuff. So yes, unfortunately, that is the future that's waiting for us. And there's a question is there a way to preserve that sense, or is it a generational cycle that right now maybe there is a certain enthusiasm and then comes a rediscovery? And I mean, there's the hope that every kind of extreme in one direction follows by some other. And but the nice thing, right? We fear about that. People in 50 years don't give a shit about this because they don't know what they lost. They live in a world, that reality, that's like our, right? I don't know. For us, it's normal, it's loud, and there's noise. And people 100 years would say, oh my God, hear the birds. I mean, actually, there probably would have been a lot of birds and insects outside of my window. And well, I don't know what I'm missing. So that's.
But also 100 years ago, there was more hunger. There was more. There's less education.
That's the whole thing.
There's less cures. There was milk wasn't pasteurized, right? So
we adapt to the circumstances that we are in,
exactly. And there are no easy.
That's the thing.
So yes. All right. Last question for you guys, and we've already kind of dipped our toe in these waters, but a prediction for each of you of arts and creativity and AI in the future. We've already kind of covered some predictions, but hopefully we're not going to end on a too dystopian of a note. Hopefully it won't be a nihilistic, oh my God. Siobhan, a prediction for about how the world might be different with respect to AI and creativity. And it could be 6 months from now, 6 years from now, 60 years from now, dealer's choice of time frame.
I honestly, I don't think anybody could really predict the next 10 years accurately given the pace
Botto
of
can.
It's kind of it makes the future it wants to predict, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we all will be very well entertained and be happy. And I mean, my ideal future is where kind of we solve the problem that I don't know. I mean, that's my utopian future where everybody's happy, lives safely, can work if they want to, but don't have to. And so because AI takes care of all of that, but there's not a big conglomerate of companies that take in all the money, but actually there is an altruistic AI which makes but it doesn't work, right? In the end, there will be 3 companies left. We are kind of
but also this podcast is about decentralized AI, right? So I'm guessing that, to your point, Mario, if we want that future of the benefits of AI and the fruits of AI, but not consolidated in 3 giant, scary tech companies, it has to be decentralized, I think, right? You need to have some kind of counterweights to the idea of the Skynet company controlling all.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that was a relatively hopeful note to end on. So I appreciate that. I so enjoyed this. I'm so enthralled by both of your projects. There'll be links to all of this stuff in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining. Really enjoyed it. And we'll be following the next chapters of both Botto and Eva. Thanks again, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Thank you again to Mario Klingemann, creator of Botto, and Shavonne Wong, the creator of Meet Ava Here. And thank you again to Gensyn, my partner, for season 2 of The People's AI. Gensyn is a protocol for machine learning computation. Gensyn's building the network for machine intelligence. That includes execution, communication, verification, and coordination software across every capable computer or device on the planet. Thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time here at The People's AI, please subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and send to a friend and share on social, all that good stuff. Rate it 5 stars, you know the drill. Thanks again, and see you next time.